Karen?
Remembers
Sherlock
Holmes, and they realize that it's not the author who's remembered, but it's the detective or the main character. And that's how they came up with the concept of Ellery Queen as the writer and Ellery Queen as the detective. They were also very prolific and wrote well into the last series, I think it was in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken.
No, longer. The last one of them died in 71.
Yes.
And the last Ellery Queen came out around 1970. Yeah.
Later that, yeah. And of course they were on the radio. Those of us who remember the radio.
They were on the radio. There were movies made. Ralph Bellamy starred in one, and what's the other guy's name? Hugh Maul. They both played Ellery Queen. There was a series on TV with Jim, the one who was married to Tim Prentice, to Paul Prentice. Hutton. Jim Hutton, who was Timothy Hutton's father, I think, whatever. But they were on the radio for years, and they didn't write for a while because they were so busy writing their radio strips. But in 1941, they put out an anthology that is still considered one of, they go back to the detective stories. They put out an anthology that is still considered one of the best anthologies of all of mystery stories. It was called 101 Years of Entertainment. And it was 1841 when Poe wrote Murders in the Rue Morgue to 1941. And it is a superb collection of stories with their comments about them. It was also in 1941 that they started Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine, which gave a start to all kinds of people. And people like Steinbeck and Faulkner and Perlmutter, I mean, all kinds of people were writing short things that they could stick into Ellery Queen. So yeah, he was simply, he was remarkable, yes.
Yeah. I had a very dear friend who is no longer with us, and her name was Adele Schwartz. She lived here in Larchmont. And Adele had divorced her husband, Harry, because he just never made a living. And Adele was kind of working her way up in the world. And she called me, we were tennis partners, and she called me one day and said, "Mary, guess who I'm going out with and who I'm going to marry?" And I said, "Who?" I don't read mystery stories. She said, "Fred Dene, who lived here in Larchmont." Well, she was very excited, of course, and planning her new life. She gave this big party. He was, of course, at the party. It was all very exciting until this dear friend of mine came down with a case of cancer. Fred Dene had lost 2 wives to cancer. And as soon as he found out that Adele had cancer, dropped her like a hot potato. Adele died, sadly. Fred Dene lived for a while longer, not much longer, and then he died of a heart attack. So that's my connection with Fred Dene.
That's a good story.
Why did so many authors use pseudonyms? And how did they cash their checks?
I do not have an answer for you. I do not have an answer for you, Fred. I have no idea. But a lot of writers use pseudonyms. What can I tell you? Now, do notice that the reason the humorous tone works in this story, even though you don't like it, George, the humorous tone works in the story because the guy doesn't die at the end. I mean, if this had really been a murder and the poor dean had passed away, I mean, the humorous tone would have been totally inappropriate. There are some funny, murder stories, but not with a short story. You really can't do that combination. I love the ending because Dean Hope is, quote, the indestructible Elizabethan scholar. So it reassures you it's okay. He's recovering very nicely from his concussion or whatever, and he can hold Ellery's hand and say, "My queer Dean." Just marvelous. Now, if you look at this, Ellery Queen actually did followed all of the rules, even in his short stories. Okay, maybe not the Gathering the Suspects, but in his novels, he followed all of the rules of all of the elements for mystery plots, detective plots. Definitely an unusual detective, very intelligent, deductive logic. His assistant, his assistant of lesser intelligence is combined with the less effective member of the police force, his father. I mean, his father is a lovely, sweet, wonderful man, and he's definitely not as bright as his son Ellery, but they do have a fabulous relationship. I mean, Ellery never puts him down. He's a fond, loving son. You didn't have, again, short stories, you don't have much room for red herrings, although you have a very clear red herring here because of the Spoonerisms. You know, you think that it's Gorman when in fact it's Morgan. So, I mean, he does use the early mysteries up until 1941, the ones he wrote between 29 and 41, all have that same Roman hat, Greek cross, you know, It wasn't until when he starts to write again in the 40s, and they start to write again in the 40s, and the thing shifts somewhat. He had been imitating, they say, S.S. Van Dyne's Philo Vance. This very complex solutions to the mysteries, a rather snobbish intellectualism. He changes after. There's a period where they are not too fond of it, where they throw in a love interest. I feel guilty because it was supposed to be all female detectives, but I couldn't resist this one. So you'll have to forgive me. And I actually made a mistake because I also thought he does have, there is one woman who shows up consistently. There's a little redhead named Nikki Porter, who's kind of his amanuensis and secretary and whatever, and there's a suggestion of romance there, I think. But those are very much lighter in weight. Cal?
Yeah, I'd like to recommend this anthology, The Best of Ellery Queen.
Oh, good.
Because it's 4 decades of story.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So that what happens is when you go through them and they're great fun, you'll see the change in techniques that Ellery Queen used.
Thank you.
This is
what's it called?
From the library.
The Best of
Ellery Queen.
Thank you.
And it's in the Westchester library system.
Okay.
Whereas the Yaki book, there's only one in the entire Westchester library.
Really?
There's only one copy of it.
Sorry about that. The last one, yes, you may say anything you want, my dear.
Spoonerisms. I knew what they were.
Yes.
And then we get to the end, and it's not 2 words. That's really in my mind there.
Well, actually it is. The only words where where they transpose, instead of dear queen, it's queer E. So that's valid.
How does he go from Gorman to Morgan?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that was a syllable thing. Yeah, rather than yeah. Okay, I can appreciate that. Okay, James Gaffey. Younger than any of them. Born in 1927. The others are all, way earlier.
25 gets 618 North Avenue West.
Born in Chicago, lived at some time in New York City, obviously.
We disconnected.
Yeah,
Can we disconnect this? This is ridiculous. We keep getting the taxi and the police.
I'll just have another outlet.
Do you have any idea why it's happening? Are we plugged into a different thingy or something?
Everything's the same.
Okay. the name of that movie?
Boulevard. Well, somebody knows the answer. I would love to know why we get interference.
Why what?
Strangely enough,
I didn't hear, so I didn't hear the beginning of it.
I wonder if anybody here knows why we get interference.
Oh.
Wait, I'm not finished.
Okay.
Strangely enough, I get that on Channel 13 in the evening. I thought I was losing my mind. I radio on. Nothing connected to what I was watching.
You kind of understand when these people talk about how they're getting receiving signals from outer space through their capsules.
Does anybody know the answer?
Anyway, okay, so James Gaffney. Yeah, but if we're going to do what I want to do at the end, people are going to need the mics. Oh, you think maybe it's just this one? Hey, can we, Ray, can we get rid of this one and assume it's just this mic if you want to? Oh, it did? All right, then don't bother. No, she said that. Okay. Does that work at all? We'll see if it stops. Susan? Yes.
I had a question and a comment. Now being familiar with James Gaffney, is he a mystery writer only, or is
No, he wrote, and this fascinated me. He considers himself. This is not working. Oh, all right. The book that I think he's probably most well known for is a nonfiction book called The American Jews, published by Random House in 1968. But he has been teaching at Colorado College for the last 40 years or so. And he considers himself, he says, my life has become divided between teaching literature and writing. I write nonfiction, but think of myself primarily as a novelist. The creation of character, that is, the act of empathizing and imagining other lives and bringing them to being in prose, absorbs, delights, frustrates, and obsesses me. It also absorbs me as a teacher. My chief purpose is to make students in this age of impersonality and technology understand the peculiar grandeur and moral importance of fiction.
My comment was that I thought the mother was absolutely adorable. And I could see 8,000 of these mothers sitting in somebody's delicatessen, a living room or wherever, going through all of this. I can sew better than you. I can cook better than you. My strudel's better than you. Because I thought it was absolutely wonderful.
He has a series of novels called, they call her Mom the Maven. And he started writing them, it looks like in 1988. A Nice Murder for Mom, Mom Meets Her Maker, Mom Does Murder Sleep, My Mother the Detective, the complete Mom short stories. So that's I think that's probably the
That's
one
the one
Karen.
that the library had a copy of.
You think the mom character is in some way autobiographical?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think there's any question about it at all. That's it.
The mom of this character is representative of a whole generation of moms who did not have much of a formal education. And so it seems to me they had to rely day by day on their ability to understand the environment around them and the people with whom they associated. And it's the conclusions that they drew by from these relationships that made it possible for them to survive. And some of the women were excellent readers of character and events, others not so. But they were brilliant women.
Well, I love, Mom felt that she knew who the murderer was immediately. That was, she said, the easiest part for her, because ask any woman. If you're gonna, you know, if they're giving you something for $10, if they're giving you something for $5 that's been evaluated at 10, you know there's something wrong. So she, in her mind, immediately had to be Madame Rosa, otherwise known as Harry Schultz, was that his name, who did the killing, because this coat couldn't have been for real. A $15,000 coat, nobody's going to sell for $5,000.
The expected news was in.
Okay. Is she, I mean, she, in many ways, clearly, she is the stereotypical Jewish mother. The question for you, is her dislike of Shirley, well, actually, how did you feel about Shirley, the daughter-in-law? Do you remember her at all?
Yeah.
I mean, mom makes a comment about, well, I don't have about some education, you know. And she, well, that's my question. Is it just the natural antipathy between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, or is Shirley really a rotten person, or what?
It's a generation gap.
It's a generation gap. And interestingly enough, for all of the humor and all of the fun in this story, yes, her perception is based on the knowledge of people and of how people behave. And she is, doesn't she remind you of Miss Marple? I mean, I know it sounds weird as hell, but she is like Miss Marple in the same way when she talks about her cousin Doris.
Yes.
You know, she finds parallels in the relationships that she knows the way Miss Marple finds parallels with village people. So she's very clear that it's not a haunted pig. How ridiculous is that? That this is all a ploy from Mrs. McCluskey. And her, did you pick up when you were reading that at the seance that the woman said Juliet, not Janet? I mean, you know, my eyes went right past it. I just picked up the Tannenbaum part. I never looked at the first name. It just never occurred to me. So, yes.
This, it occurred to me, was an O. Henry story with a twist.
Yeah, twist in the end. Good. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, first Frank.
The characterization of the mother also reminds me of Grace. Of course, this is stereotyping.
Yeah.
Grace Paley, you know, uses the staying rule, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of okay.
Yeah.
She reminds me in a way of my maternal grandmother, who was an innkeeper's daughter in Europe back in the 19th century. No formal education, but knew a few languages, but she had to at that particular place. Came over when she was 19 years old, already had one child, and was the matriarch of the family. She knew everything. She had attorneys, doctors for sons. They came and they consulted her. A local rabbi, when there was a religious problem, came to talk to her. She had a mind. I died, unfortunately, when I was in my teens, but I remember she had a mind like a steel trap.
Yeah. As Esther said, a lot of these women with no education really just, they do people, and they could do things. Anyhow, I think that it pretty much concludes for today. Does anyone have any final comments they would like to make? Yes?
Back here, about 30 years ago, I don't know if anybody remembers, there was a movie made about Agatha Christie's disappearance. I don't remember who was in it, but Dustin Hoffman was in that movie. I don't remember the name of it or who played Agatha Christie. It wasn't a big hit.
I have a vague recollection.
Yeah,
It was called Agatha, wasn't it?
It was called Agatha, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I know Dustin Hoffman was in that movie. That's all I can remember.
Yeah, thank you. Fran?
Your knowledge, and I mean, he doesn't
blue books from the 30s, the old blue ones. And in the 50s, when I was just, there was a series called Vicky Barr, Airline Hostess. I wanted to be an airline hostess. You had to, but you had to be a certain height, you had to be able to speak 2 languages, you had to have a college, at least 2 years of college, and you had a manifest where they checked off people, and she went around from city to city. She went around but she went around everywhere and solved mysteries, from whatever city she was.
Early on, you mentioned B.D. James.
Hang on, folks. I mentioned B.D. James, yes.
She's one of my favorites.
Okay.
But she's a very brilliant woman. She actually worked for Stockton. And her writing is fantastic.
Yes.
It is literature.
Yes, I know. It's the difference. It is the difference. No question. Ruth Rendell is another one. Okay, so let's talk about these. Well, who was Ruth Rendell is here? Barbara Vine is. So let's talk about. I'm a Martha Grimes fan from way back. Richard Jury. Yes.
See Martha Vine and Ruth Rendell.
Yes, they are.
But I just want a silly aside as you talk about long running movies and Margaret Rutherford and like her. But in an early Margaret Rutherford movie, the woman who plays her now, what's her name? Miss Martha was a teenager in that early movie.
Oh, wow.
So that's a long time.
That is, yeah. But on my picture of Miss Marple, I'm sorry, it was always this frail, wispy little lady. Because she had faded blue eyes, fluffy white hair, she wore black mittens, and she was always knitting. And to me, she had to be skinny. So Margaret Rutherford is just a Go at 21 or 21. Well, PBS. Okay. So Martha Grimes, we're recommending Ruth Rendell, P.D. James. Anybody else have Mr. George? Yes. Faye Kellerman. Yes. I don't know what they are. Julie Spencer's Love. Okay. That's always a problem, finding the first one. Yes, well.
Both your mouth.
Like that.
Yes.
Frank.
Go do it.
I've really never attended these book discussion things before. I didn't think I would like them. I do like them. However, I would have liked to have had this discussion before I read the thing. They would have whet my appetite.
Interesting.
That's it.
Well, I have bibliographies. I have all of Agatha Christie's books listed. I think I have most of the Ellery Queens here. So, and I didn't type them up this week. I'm sorry. I was very last minute on this preparation. So I apologize. Who else? Okay. Yes.
What's your opinion? Do you feel the mystery writing is improving now? I mean, we just listed a lot of people who are writing mysteries now. In comparison to these earlier writers, what do you think?
Too much murder, mayhem, and
What's the general consensus? Dorothy wants to think. Do we think that the mystery writers, the mysteries are improving? Are they better today than they were in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s? How many of you feel that the mysteries are better today than they were? Okay. Why?
no, I don't think.
I would just like to say that I think, this is particularly, of course, not literature, but television and movies. It seems to me that it's moved away from the kind of detective story that we can talk about. Now it's more procedural, police procedural sorts of things, like the popularity of Law and Order and all these
CSI.
And I think something's been lost in a way. I always love mysteries, but I don't watch any of those police shows.
Yeah.
For one thing, they're too violent. I don't really
Darlings, I mean, there's somebody else coming on in 15 minutes. Okay, last minute to go. Carol and Suzanne, go. Oh, yeah.
Amanda Frost is also
Yes.
very good.
Yes. Are you getting these down? Are you going to remember any of them?
You're gonna make a list.
I'm going to make a list.
I think today there's a stress more on gore than there is on deduction.
Okay.
High five. I love that.
Yeah, I'll take it for a moment. I'm not a mystery reader, but I rather like the short story form of mystery because it was so well constructed, especially the LIRIC Queen. The New York Times Magazine section, I don't know how many of you have followed what they've been doing in their stories. I mean, the one that they just completed is a novel, it's a chapter. Very good, but very different. Partly because it's a novel, partly because it's a slightly different style. It has the red herring in it, but it does follow the idea of the structure of a mystery. So when you say better, my feeling is that they're different.
Yeah.
But the different doesn't necessarily mean better or not as good. And I'm only thinking of the literature because I also never watched the CSIs and that kind of thing, because that is a very different genre.
I do think there's a lot more humor, a lot more of a lighthearted. I think Stephanie Plum. You know, those are always so they're funny, and yeah, there's always a mystery, but it's not a terribly difficult one. You don't, that's why, yeah, much more psychological than intellectual, I think. Okay, and Sue Grafton.
I mean, can't mention that because we're also.
I like that, man. Okay. Folks, we have to stop. We have